So my name is Sam Kirwan. I'm a researcher based at the University of Warwick. I've been doing research around debt and debt advice for around 5-6 years now. And what I've been doing the last few years is doing work with and about the advice sector. So I've been interviewing clients of the debt advice service and figures in the debt advice field. In relation to the first question we had, which was, is it possible or desirable to prevent people and communities from getting into debt? I would say desirable, maybe, but possible, no. For large numbers of households in the UK, the combination of welfare reform and precarious employment means that, from an advice point of view, even having maximised income, and assuming that that income is going to stay stable, which you know in a lot of cases it's not going to, even then there isn't enough money to meet everyday expenditure. It's the problem of the deficit budget sheet. So in those circumstances, people are going to need access to credit. So from my point of view, we shouldn't be assuming that people can or should be existing, without credit. And we need to be looking at making sure that they can access credit, on the best terms, and doing whatever we can to alleviate the stress and anxiety of being in debt. Most of my work is about people's difficulties in meeting their what we call priority debt obligations. So those are the debts for which the consequences of non-repayment are the most severe, and these are principally rent arrears and council tax, but I would point also to the growing problem of universal credit overpayments. Considering those debts, I would draw attention to the fact that experience of them there's great regional or geographic variation in how those debts are experienced. That is, that it's decisions and circumstances at the local authority level play a great role in defining what those debts are going to mean in your everyday life. So those are the presence of a council tax support or reduction scheme, how the local authority collects and enforces council tax, the balance of housing stock between local authority, housing association and private tenancies, and the stage of universal credit and the stage of rollout of universal credit. Where you have a kind of conjunction of all those factors, you will see a lot of households that are facing kind of multiple welfare reform issues. So maybe the benefit cap, bedroom tax, they might be facing a sanction, plus facing bailiff action for unpaid council tax, but potentially that they've never had to pay before. But then sitting around all of that, underneath it, is the threat of eviction, and particularly, most concerning is the threat of eviction for rent arrears under mandatory grounds. So that's under Section 8 of the Housing Act. What I would draw attention to is the level of stress and anxiety that people are living with under these circumstances, and particularly households with children. What does it mean to be growing up in a situation where your parents are constantly anxious about money and debt, where any knock at the door might be someone that wants to search the house, search your bedroom, where letters and phone calls might presage some further deepening of this catastrophe. In my work with figures in the debt advice field, I've been trying to put together a wish list of legislative change. People will point to the need to expand access to the debt relief order, which is a form of insolvency for people without income and assets, and things like decriminalising the TV licence. One thing I would point to is looking at, again, Sections 8 and 21 of the Housing Act, which enable mandatory eviction. I think we need to seriously consider that as a kind of shaping factor in how people experience debt, that essential anxiety, will you lose your home? But really around all that, I point to the welfare reform. The importance of drawing together a coalition of advice services, of charities, in fighting and resisting at every turn the destructive effects of welfare reform, the levels of really unnecessary stress and anxiety that this is putting on people. Really, we have welfare reform pushing a debt crisis, driving a homelessness crisis, and we need to think about changing this.